Hey guys, welcome to the FitTown Show. I'm Coach Andrew, joined by Coach Austin, and today we're going to be talking about what a perfect week of FTX workouts look like, talk about our programming process a little bit, and give you guys an aerial view of the behind the scenes of our workouts and our programming process. And we just recently shot a couple episodes ago that we did the same thing for Beach Fit. There will be some overlap between the two, but you guys will get to kind of see the nuances and the differences between the two programs. So Austin and I do the FTX program, and actually Coach Nick is part of that as well now in the weekly meeting. But can you talk a little bit about the process of programming?
Yeah, so if you guys listened to the last podcast, you guys probably know we meet once a week, and that's kind of like when everything's almost done. And then from that point, it's just finer details. But zooming out a bunch, for me, it kind of starts at looking like at a couple months at a time of what we kind of want the focus to be. Whether it be like maybe we're focusing on like a weightlifting movement, maybe it's like a hinge pattern, a squat pattern, et cetera, et cetera. Trying to figure out what the bigger purpose of the given time frame is going to be. Once you kind of zoom in a little bit, I'll break it down by the week. Once I break it down by the week, I usually start by setting up what I want our repeat workouts to be, or the main, sauce of the week is going to be the big thing. The big thing is going to move everything else around. It's like the anchor. So whether that be a repeat workout or if we're on a deadlift progression, maybe it's like, where am I going to put that? And then where is everything else in the puzzle going to fit? So let's say it is a deadlift. The deadlift is a hinge pattern. What I usually try to do once I figured out where I want that to be is like, there's certain movement patterns that I want to hit once a week, and then how am I going to space those out over that week to where it doesn't interfere with one thing to the next. So I want to get a hinge in there, I want to get a press in there, maybe vertical, horizontal, I want to get a pull in there, I want to get a squat in there, and then usually we try to do some kind of carry, pull, something along the lines of a different style of a movement, but spacing those out along the week. Once I've done that and I've kind of decided like, all right, Monday we're going to hinge, Wednesday we're going to squat, Friday we'll press. From that point on, I kind of figure out time domains of certain workouts. So if Monday was that deadlift day, I know that day is going to have a pretty hefty strength, which means it's going to be a really short time domain in the workout afterwards because we don't have that much time. So maybe that's 10 minutes. And our goal is to usually, the sweet spot I would say of FTX is usually like that 10 to 15-ish minute range. We like to try to get one that's at least 30-ish minutes or over 30 minutes that you guys have probably noticed. But that 10 to 15 is kind of our sweet range, and then we like to fill in the gaps from there, maybe a 20, 24, somewhere in that range. I like to mess with the time domains and spread those out across the week. Once I kind of have that figured out, I dig into each day individually to space out the movements across the given week. So making sure I don't have too many overlapping movement patterns. Like if it's deadlift on Monday, I obviously don't want to do heavy kettlebell swings on Tuesday, something along the lines there. And then volume comes into play too. So I don't want to overdo pull-ups. Although pull-ups is a really good example because we sometimes work to workouts. Like Murph is a great example. Leading up to Murph, we purposely start building people's volume of pull-ups. Yep. So volume is a good thing depending on what we're building into to kind of raise or lower depending on the given goal of the time frame. So once I get that detail set, I just start filling in the gaps with movements and different stimuluses from really fast to slower workouts. And yeah, kind of what I'm trying to get people to improve on, maybe pacing or certain movements, things like that. Hope that wasn't too much.
Yeah, we can go into the more details of that. I wanted to take a step back and just give people the outline of like how it actually happens. So what day of the week do you normally set kind of the rough draft of the workouts?
Yeah, so as most of you guys know, coaches take classes. So I like to try to take as many classes as I can to understand what the athlete is feeling from a body standpoint. Like, okay, did those two movements not mesh together very well? Like, how am I feeling? And I like to ask questions a lot, like things like that. But I usually make the next week's rough draft actually throughout the week. So I'll start getting ideas like when I'm working out, when I talk to people, I'll just jot down little ideas and kind of just save them in like a little drive or document on Drive. But Sunday is when I really dig into putting stuff on paper. And then Monday is usually when I finalize that and then send it over to you and Nick. and then Amanda, so she can double check.
So essentially you're actually talking 2 weeks in advance is when these ideas are going on paper, and then the week before, Sunday or Monday, is when they're kind of getting funneled into an actual week.
Yeah, and I don't think we're ever like at loss for ideas. Ideas are like constantly popping up. Like I know Amanda gave the example of like she like wakes up in the middle of the night and writes ideas. I sleep really well, so that's not an issue for me. But
you don't sleep a lot though.
That's true. Yeah, babies kind of take that away. But no, I get the ideas the most when I'm actually doing the workout. I'm like, wow, that was great. I wonder if I would have just tweaked this like a little bit differently, what that would have felt like. But yeah, it's the week before most of the time. Sunday I kind of write like a little skeleton. Monday I really fill it in. And then when I send it over, I try to leave it alone for like 24 hours. I know Amanda said this too, like you look over something for so long that you think it looks really good. And then Tuesday I try to go back over it with like more of a detail eye, like did I miss anything like really silly that I can go ahead and switch before our meeting so that we're not like, wasting time doing like, hey, did you know you did back squat on Monday and Tuesday? That doesn't happen, but something as silly as that before Wednesday when they really pick it apart, which helps me out.
Yeah, so Wednesday we're all meeting together, usually 75 minutes or so, and we get it all finalized. And then from there, you kind of take the ball and do even more with it. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so once we finalize everything, my favorite part of the week is I find names for everything. If I don't already have names for the workouts, I'll somehow get creative, you call that, with the names. But beyond that, once I pass that point, I kind of have an idea of what I expect workouts to feel like. We've just done so many of them over the years that we kind of have an idea. I think the big thing to take away from this is we don't test all of our workouts beforehand. It'd be like nearly impossible for us to do that. But because we've done so many, we have an idea of how movements are going to mesh together and how they're going to feel and what a certain stimulus most likely will feel like on a given workout. We're wrong sometimes. Like we'll say like we think people are going to get 5 rounds on this AMRAP and they get like 3. But for the most part, we are pretty accurate or pretty close to that. So with all the knowledge of that, of the background and what I expect and think people should get or what they should shoot for on the workout, I write the coach's notes. So I write coaches notes for our coaches so that we can stay consistent on coaching it. But then I also write WOD tips for you guys to read. So those are usually in Sugarwater where you'll see them posted up on the board, where I kind of just give like an overview on each specific day, because ideally when we program, every day has a purpose. We don't just want to like throw something on the paper. Like you should be able to look at the WOD tips and find the purpose of the day, and every day should have a distinct purpose for that day. So I'll take the time, write out those WOD tips, just give you guys some ideas, some thoughts, and then when you go into it, you have a better idea, hopefully, if you've read it, before you even get to the whiteboard of what's going to happen that day. And then going back to the coach's notes, obviously not all the coaches program. I'm the programmer, and I have to try to write that on a paper of like what we're expecting that workout to feel like. Basically, it's like a much more detailed WOD tips for them so that when they deliver it to you guys, it's consistent from the 5 a.m. to the 5:30 p.m.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about it in our Beach Fit programming episode, but then that's where the opening coach for that day will actually make a minute-by-minute lesson plan that's utilizing the coach's notes, utilizing the purpose of the day, and creating a warm-up and a cool-down for that day to make it the full 45 or 60-minute class. So that's really cool. And then when it comes to purpose, one of the things that I would want to point out to the audience is that it's not just the workout that in and of itself creates a certain type of feel. Like you need the purpose. And like one of the things that we start every meeting with is, instead of us jumping to giving you our feedback, we say like, what were you trying to accomplish here, Austin? Like what is, give us the rundown of the week. What do you want to happen each day? What were you kind of hoping for? And then we can tell him if we think he's pulling it off well, or if we say like, no, I think you're completely off base. Like if you want that to happen, we need more rest, more repetitions here, less repetitions here, this movement instead of that movement. Like based on what your objective is, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And then that way we can translate to our staff, translate it to you guys as clients, so you can show up with a purpose or focus for each day. Yeah,
and I think a good way to, at least one way that helps me, like not only find a purpose, but find certain like reps and times and things like that, is like I try to take who, like an athlete I think is going to be the best at it, and an athlete I think is going to be the slowest at it. And that's kind of how we come up with things. It's like, because it's tough because there is a big difference between some of the athletes. So it's like, if I just throw something on paper, you might have an athlete who finishes in 5 minutes and someone who finishes in 20 minutes.
Yep.
What can we do to almost not even the playing field, because there's still going to be some differences, but make it closer. Make it where everyone almost ends the class on time together is kind of the goal on some days. And now some days, like I think FitTown Triathlon is a good example. Like, there's just going to be people who are much faster at that workout. Yeah. And if you're trying to push yourself to do the thing like prescribed and not cut down to like the fitness distances, like you can expect a potentially 10-minute difference between your best and slowest athletes. Now that's just one weird example, but for most days we try to look at, can we make this consistent from person to person, and how can we do that?
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest differences between Beach Fit and FTX is, yes, in Beach Fit we do try to have a purpose for each day. We don't want it to just be, oh, we're just going to get you sweaty. But I think we really hone in on that in FTX, where you say, okay, today's going to have a hinge focus. We're going to have a deadlift strength. We're going to pair that with heavy Russian kettlebell swings in the workout, and it's going to have really the whole day is built around that hinge theme. And I think in Beach Fit, there's more variety, there's more movements, and we're kind of trying to get a full body feel almost every single day. And really the focus in Beach Fit seems to come more from what type of aerobic type of feeling we want to get. Is it going to be, low and slow? Is it going to be short and intense? Where in FTX, we're dialing into movement patterns, maybe a skill that we want to build the day around, like a handstand or a toes to bar, a snatch. And there's a lot more variety in terms of what things we're willing to do. We're willing to go heavy for short reps with lots of rest, and we're willing to go long for 30 plus minutes in a day and everything in between.
Yeah, and I think to add on that, the one thing that really separates the two from each other is, and why we have to have every day have its own distinct focus, is just the load differences. Like Beach Fit, you can go heavy, you can do a heavy kettlebell deadlift even with a big tempo, but how heavy can you go?
Right.
And when you compare it to a heavy barbell deadlift, right, and what's the differences on the body? Pretty dramatic. Doing a heavy deadlift or a heavy sumo deadlift over in the FTX building is going to take a lot on the nervous system compared to doing lighter reps for multiple reps over in Beach Fit, where the goal is more aerobic type movement. So I think that's a big thing too, of why we have to be really careful with the amount of a specific movement pattern we hit in a given week, where Beach Fit is it is almost full body every single day, and it's very appropriate if that's the goal over here. So
yeah, I think it's the skill component is another aspect of it. Is we don't want to have 4 really technical movements in one day in an FTX class, because then it's hard to get people to move well. It's hard to get them to be able to improve something. So if we have a snatch, we're going to not have, most likely not going to have a handstand and a toes to bar and a rope climb, partially because of logistics, but partially because from a coaching perspective and from the client's perspective, you're just trying to get through that day. You're not going to make any of those 4 movements better that day. You're just going to be trying to get through that workout. So I think having those higher technical skills also forces us to kind of narrow our focus to 1 or 2 of them on any given day.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. And I think just to give the more the perfect day of what we're looking for, I think the perfect FTX day is where you have a weightlifting movement mixed with a gymnastics movement, and then some kind of aerobic or conditioning type movement. Mm-hmm. Even if it's running, biking, or double under, something as simple as that, paired with a toe to bar and a clean. To me, that's the perfect little triplet, and I think a lot of our workouts kind of base off that. And then we of course throw in curveballs all the time of chippers and 2 couplet sprints and a bunch of different things. But if I had to give what is the perfect FTX day, it would be that strength with a big focus. Maybe it's a clean, and then bring that down and try to pair it with a nice triplet. To me, that's that is FTX.
Yeah. So when you look at the week as a whole, we're generally trying to have 3 to 4 strengths per week. Those are typically paired with more of your short to moderate workouts, usually 15 minutes or less on the conditioning side, paired with a 12 to 15 minute strength. Mm-hmm. We try not to go over 30 minutes of program stuff, because we find that once you add in maybe some time to build, a warm up, some cleanup time, which we have a lot more of right now, so maybe some time to cool down, it really starts to eat away at the hour, even without a lot of downtime. So we try to stay under 30 minutes in terms of program stuff. And then when we don't have the strength on those 2 or 3 other days that we have, that's when we typically like to go longer, or maybe do some intervals where we have some rest built in. So the total time of the workout might be longer, even though you're not working for the entirety of that time. And when we talk about going long, we usually like to have one that's 20 minutes or more in a week. And then our newest thing, which is really new over the last couple of months, is we want to go over 30 minutes once a week. And that was something that we just recently was kind of like a light bulb moment of like, number one, members seem to like the challenge of it. But then 2, it's like in FTX, there's so many ways for our members to make workouts that should be more aerobic, and they turn them into anaerobic workouts. They turn them into interval workouts where it's like stop and go, when they should be just these aerobic sustainable efforts. So to help our members really build a stronger endurance, stronger aerobic system, we really feel like it's necessary to go over 30 minutes at least once a week.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed those, and I know people have been giving good feedback on it. Like, just it's one of those workouts where there's not too much thought process behind you doing it. It's just like you're going to be moving for X amount of time, like come and get sweaty. Whereas like those workouts that are more, shorter or more fine detailed, you have to have like a very strong game plan almost going in of like, how am I going to attack this? Because you know how nasty it's going to get. Whereas 30 minutes is like, you're not going to be game planning for 30 minutes. 30 minutes is 30 minutes. Like, what steady pace can I find in the first part of this workout that I can try to sustain or maybe improve over some time? So
yeah, I want to talk about kind of like benchmarks and how you set that up. You touched on it a little bit, but I want to give a more clear example, because one of the things we're always trying to balance in here is the constantly varied nature of the type of programs that we do, right? We're not trying to create variety for the sake of variety. We're trying to create variety to hit all margins of the experience, right? We're trying to have workouts that are short and intense and less than 5 or 10 minutes, so you guys can learn how to be powerful and explosive and go fast. And then we're trying to do long ones so we can learn how to be sustainable and aerobic and do all that. So I lost my train of thought here for a second, but basically, like with this variety of stuff, we don't want to get so much variety though that we don't hit something enough to improve on it, right? Yeah. So when it comes to a benchmark, when we're building to something like this week, we have the Heartbreak Kid. I know we had conversations over the last 3 or 4 or 5 weeks of programming saying, hey, I'd like to do Heartbreak Kid, but realistically we haven't been doing enough volume of heavier squats and workouts, higher volume chest to bar and workouts. So I'm going to make sure over the next 3 to 4 weeks, not that it's going to be this beautiful linear progression, because not all of our members show up the same day. We're not all on the same training schedule, but I want to make sure I hit these components of this benchmark workout enough over a month leading up to it. So when people get there, they're best set to perform well in that without having to change the constantly varied nature of our program.
Yeah, I think you put it the best you could of what I was going to say too. So I think that's a perfect example. Heartbreak Kid was the focus over the past 4, maybe even 5 weeks. And my goal is not to like, oh, we're going to continue doing front squats and we're going to continue doing chest to bar, and I'm going to continue pairing them together so that no matter what, they're going to perform once they get there. My thought process is like, okay, like Heartbreak Kid has 60 chest to bar. That's a lot. Yeah. Or pull-ups, whatever variation you're doing, regardless of what you're doing. In that short of a workout, that is a lot of reps. Yep. So, okay, 1, I need to start building that volume over the next couple of weeks. 2, and thanks to COVID, we've been pulling from the floor into our squats for months now. So 1, I didn't really need to change anything with that aspect. I just knew that maybe we would get front squat from the floor into a workout or 2 in the weeks leading up. I didn't need to change it drastically because without our racks that we haven't had since March, essentially, we've been doing a lot of that. So I knew they'd be prepared pulling from the floor going into heavy squats. So I knew they were good there. So my focus leading up was like, okay, I need to build pull-up volume. So over the next couple of weeks, I sprinkled them in. I think 2 weeks before Heartbreak Kid was our closest comparison. No one probably noticed it except me, just because I write them. But we had a 3-round workout that was 9 clean and jerks, 15 chest to bar, and then a 21 cal row, and then 18 for the ladies on the row. So it's not identical. For those of you that don't know, Heartbreak Kid is 3 rounds, 10 front squats, really heavy, 20 chest to bar, and then 50 double unders. So little triplet. The big movement in both of those workouts is that chest to bar. The set of 15 or a set of 20 is a lot of reps. So how are you going to attack it on that day? And then how can you carry that over to 2 weeks later when we do the essentially very close workout, with just a slight change in the feeling? And to me, it's like Heartbreak Kid is a little bit more challenging because double unders don't give you a lot of time to rest. Not that the rower gives you time to rest, but it gives you more time between the sets.
Yeah.
But still, building that, getting you that almost confidence on that movement so that when you do hit the workout, you are more prepared to PR. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we want, is we want you guys to continue improving. So if I were to just not touch front squats and chest to bar and then be like, hey, this is what we got today, like, I'm setting you guys up for failure in the long run.
Yeah. Some of the things that it's funny, I kind of just overlooked when we did the Beach Fit podcast was like, we didn't really talk about like, we don't do the same movement twice in a week. Like you'll see every once in a while, you might see like a burpee box jump and a burpee later in the week, but it's very rare. But like we hone in on the week and make sure that we don't duplicate movements. The one exception that would be like cardio stuff. We are willing to run twice in a week, row twice in a week, or bike. But I would say that's another big difference between FTX and Beach Fit. Beach Fit, we almost go out of our way to make sure that we're running twice, rowing twice, and biking twice, maybe ski once because we have less of those. But in FTX, we're trying to lean more towards just once a week of those cardio pieces, and maybe one of those things doubles up. So we might row twice in a week, but we probably wouldn't also bike twice and run twice in that same week, because there's more focus on kind of the body weight movements and the strength movements in FTX.
Yeah, and I think it's a good time now to kind of say like the focus, at least for me as I'm programming for FTX, is making like the most well-rounded athlete as possible. And I get a lot of feedback on certain things like, hey, why don't we do like 1 rep maxes more often? Hey, why don't we go heavier this and heavy that? Like, well, I'm not trying to make you the strongest athlete possible. Like, I'm trying to make you the best athlete possible. So you need to not only be good at doing a heavy deadlift, you need to be being good at like ring dips and muscle ups and skills like that. So so my focus is like how well-rounded can we get, and I think that's really the 30-minute thing was a huge component of helping that too. I think that was a big thing we've missed. And then you see workouts like, those longer hero workouts like Murph, Glenn we have coming up, like they stretch that like 40-minute window where if you're not hitting those consistently, it'll punch you right in the face. And I think they're actually going to be set up much better this year going in, because we've done those once a week. Like we've hit that time domain once a week for the past however many months at this point. So
yeah, I think it'd be good to also talk about like doing away with kind of the RX and scaled a little bit in this episode, because that is kind of a big component. I mean, I know in our programming meetings we used to spend a ton of time on those fitness, performance, and sport standards to really dial those in, and we still have those on certain days. It's less about the weights now and more about kind of the gymnastics movements of how might we want to adjust it for people that have different goals or working around injuries. But do you want to talk just briefly about that and like why we only have that on benchmarks right now?
Yeah, so, well, real quick, the reason we only have them on benchmarks is because we want to be able to have data that we can easily repeat. So let's just use Heartbreak Kid again. 155, 105 is the performance weight for the front squats. So regardless of where you are, like every time we do Heartbreak Kid, that's always going to be the performance weight, so that we have something to base it off of. And then when you guys plug in your notes into SugarWOD, if you guys used 95 and 65 pounds, you have an understanding of where you currently are on that workout to where the performance is, which is tricky, right? Because why we've kind of done away with it is like, where did that number come from, and what does it have to do with anything? And that's really the reason. It's just completely made up. It's just a number that someone is looking for a certain stimulus or feeling from a workout, and they just put a number with it. However, like every athlete is completely different, and every athlete has a different goal and why for every single workout. So not only that, everyone has different maxes and lifts and numbers. And if you were just to say like, if me and you do 155 front squats, your front squat's like 200 pounds more than mine. Like,
thank you.
You're welcome. It's not 200, but But like it's not even close to the same of a feeling of you front squatting 155 to me front squatting 155.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well then let's take even something like body weight into it. Like you weigh more than I do, so like where is this number even coming from? Because there's no reason for it. Now, the reason we did away with it is one, we had those athletes trying to push because a number was on the board instead of pushing to a type of workout that we wanted to accomplish. So instead of saying like, hey guys, we want you to do 10 reps of this squat unbroken, people would shoot for that number on the board and be able to do like 4 in a row, have to put it down, clean it back up, do 4 in a row, have to put it back down, do 2 in a row. So like I said in the very beginning, our goal is to try to get everyone as close as possible at the end of the workout, or as close as we can possibly get it with the differences between athletes. So doing away with the number allows you to make the workout more for you. So maybe for me, Heartbreak Kid is great at 155, but you being a stronger athlete, you can rip through 155 like it's nothing. So maybe 185, the sport option, is the better option for you, or whatever you want to make sport that day for you. It also allows you the chance to work on something that you want to work on. So if we have a workout that's like, it has 5 power cleans in it, and you've been working on power cleans and you want to challenge yourself a little bit in the workout, there's no one saying like, hey, we're only going to go to 95 pounds a day. If you wanted to push to 135, it gives you the opportunity to do that, and to modify that workout to fit you and whatever goals you're trying to hit. So
yeah, it's funny because like, I guess the original thought behind having scaled and RX weights is like, okay, well, this allows us to sort of translate the stimulus to the client, the athlete. And then over time, what we learned is that actually, no, it's a distraction to the real stimulus, which is, like you said, this is an arbitrary number, an arbitrary standard. And that what we've learned is that there's better ways to convey that. So like a better way to convey this needs to be heavy today is to say this needs to be heavy today, and it should be done unbroken in your first set and maybe be broken up in your future sets. That is universal to everybody, whereas to just throw a weight on the board tends to be universal only for your youngest, fittest athletes in the gym, and then everybody else is kind of like having to do some math to figure out, well, what would be a better weight for me? Whereas when we give those more universal things of, this should be hard, it should be something that you really don't want to hang on to, but you can still do unbroken. Or our toes to bar today, our gymnastics movement should be in 2 to 3 sets for the first couple rounds, maybe start to flow into that 4 to 5 set range. If you're going to singles in round number 2 or 3, let's think about modifying the movement to something else, right? We haven't even talked about what we're actually doing, what standard, what skill, but we now have an approach and a plan, and and you have no idea how many reps we're talking about. I could have just been talking about a 10 rep set, I could have been talking about a 50 rep set, but you now know the approach.
Yep.
Another thing that I wanted to touch on here is like we talked about like the things that make FTX different from Beach Fit, and we commonly hear like this looks more like a Beach Fit workout than an FTX workout, and it's like there's tons of overlap between the two programs, and like our sweet spot in Beach Fit is 18 to 25 minutes. So anytime we do an FTX workout that falls in that 18 to 25 minute workout range, it could easily look very much like a Beach Fit workout, and we're not going to have the barbell every day because nothing in life looks like a barbell. So, if we want people to be as fit and well-rounded as they can be, they need to touch different objects, dumbbells and kettlebells and med balls. So we need them to touch objects that we use in Beach Fit as well. But one of the things that I think is a defining factor in FTX is how short we go on some days. And it's something we don't do in Beach Fit. A short Beach Fit workout might still be 12 to 15 minutes. That tends to be more of a moderate length FTX workout. A short FTX workout could be as long as a couple minutes. Generally what we found that we like, which is a nice balance, is more of these interval days where it might be 2 to 3 minutes of work. You might take a good chunk of rest and repeat that 1 or 2 more times. So you're still getting this really short, intense time domain. You're learning to go at these higher speeds, but there's enough repeatability to it that you're getting more of that endurance component as well.
I think actually our workout today is a perfect example.
Yeah.
It's 4 2-minute AMRAPs. It has rest in there, but if you just calculate how long you're actually working, it's 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So like I think the way we kind of classify like a short workout is we try to get one workout that's under 10 minutes or around 10 minutes in a week, and those are usually the workouts that tend to have you laying on the back when you're done because they are so intense in such a short amount of time. There is really no pacing in those kind of workouts. It's just go. Whereas like 12 to 15, you kind of have to throttle back. And then 30 or 20 to 30 or plus, like you definitely have to throttle back, or you're just going to blow up really early. So yeah, that kind of gives that chance to just to push on a workout, to see like, what you're capable of in that kind of environment. Whereas, everyone is able to find a pace and hang out in a comfortable zone. But if you're just always hanging out in a comfortable zone, you're only going to be good in the comfortable zone. So, getting that into that shorter window makes it uncomfortable, and, that makes adaptations and change. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Intensity is one of the biggest components to creating change, creating results. So I'm trying to think of some of the other things that I look at when I assess a week. So when you hand us a week and me and Nick are looking at it, what are kind of the things that we're poking holes at? One that comes to mind for me is like rep ranges on stuff. Yeah. I'm really big onto that. Is like sometimes what I've noticed with people that program workouts is that they'll go for what looks pretty on paper in terms of a rep range, as opposed to what's the most beneficial for creating the best possible workout. So an example of that would be like, okay, you might want to do a chipper workout that has like 30 reps of everything, but it wouldn't really be fair to make one of those movements bar muscle ups and then another movement double unders, because 30 bar muscle ups is a lot of reps for most people, and 30 double unders for anybody that has double unders is like nothing, right? So it's really important that we're looking at the balance of those rep ratios, and it's one of the things that we constantly pay attention to when we're getting feedback to members. One of the reasons why we ask, like, what was the hardest part of the workout today, or what was the easiest part of the workout today? And we try to make sure that every movement in that day has a reason to be there. And sometimes if the reps are too low compared to other movements, that movement could be better off, that workout would be better off without that movement. We could save that for another day. So that's one of the big ones. Are there any others that you can think of that we kind of poke holes at, or we're kind of assessing the week on?
Yeah, well, first, they poke a lot of holes. I think that's a big one. I think you actually touched on it right at the very end, and it's movement selection for a given stimulus. So if I have the intention of it being a really quick workout, I'm just going to make this workout up, but it has thrusters, double unders, and then sit-ups. And I'm like, yeah, I want this to be like the hard sprint workout of the week. And then you look at it and you're like, well, then why would sit-ups be in there? Because sit-ups are a chance for the heart rate to come down. It doesn't take much skill or energy to do sit-ups. They're still a great movement. They're still challenging, but in that given workout, does it make the most sense if that was your goal in creating the workout? And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. I should probably do something, that takes either a little bit more skill or a little bit more, it makes you a little bit more tired if that was my goal to push you. So something like that. I think you guys hit on just like certain movement patterns. Like if I think there is an overlap, you guys could definitely see an overlap on certain things. Like even something now that I have to take into account with COVID is if we're doing a squat and it involves a barbell, that also means it's a hinge.
Yeah.
So like on Monday, if I do power cleans, and then on Tuesday I wanted to do back squats, I have to understand that right now, because we can't use racks, that they also have to clean the barbell up.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's unfortunate right now, but I'm just happy we're back in the gym. So that's also something I have to take into consideration that I often forget right now. I'm just so used to like, okay, we'll be back squat from the rig, and they're good to go there. And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. That if they want to go heavy and get any stimulus out of it, like they're gonna have to clean a couple times at a pretty decent load. That's one thing. I think the biggest thing for me that you guys help me on is really dialing in the time domains of each day. Not so much that I didn't have the idea of it, just making them more precise. So like I think this workout's going to take around this time, where you guys are, I'm like, it's probably going to be like 12 minutes, and you guys like, that one might be like 14, maybe 15. I'm like, okay, and then we kind of talk it out and we find a more appropriate time domain for it. I think just like helping me with the small details is the best way. And I think one big one also is there ever a day that's like, not that it's easy or it's a recovery day, but is there a day that's not just going to completely trash someone? I think that's a big one. I think like I'll program like the week and I'll be like, okay, like you could make this the recovery day. In the end, it's like max calorie row, and I'm like, well, is that really like going to actually allow you to recover? Like, yeah, you can make it a recovery day, and I think that's a big thing we could talk about is like, you can really make whatever day you want to, like a nice, easy recovery type day if you need it. But there needs to be a time when you don't have to lay on the floor when you're done.
Yeah.
I think people like judge workouts on how hard it was or challenging it was by did they fall on the floor when it's done. And I think there's a lot of other ways you can, you know, compare and contrast workouts, but there needs to be some days where that's not the case. If you guys want to do this long term, and we
don't do it quite as much because I think I've seen, I don't know if you've seen this too, but a little change in approach or an evolution in the approach since COVID, as people almost like have to experience life without this. They don't put as much pressure on their performance in this, but just more about getting this in because they know what life looks like when they can't get into the gym. But yeah, I think I've just seen where I lost my train of thought again. You're gonna have to help me out.
The recovery days.
Yeah, the recovery days. I've seen where people, we used to do no score days. That was what I was gonna bring up. We used to do no score days a lot, and we haven't had to do that as much because people have, you know, this recovery word is kind of this like hot button word for me because I want every day to be worth someone's money and reason to show up here. I want every day to stand alone and be worth it. And I think sometimes people hear that word recovery, and when they're coming 6-7 days a week, they usually don't mind that. Sometimes they still mind it because they still want to compete every day. But for other people, they might be coming in 2, 3, 4 days a week, and when they hear that word recovery, they think of it as a wasted day.
Yep.
And I think it's really important that we do put the time and effort into making sure every day has a clear purpose. Recovery workout is not a bad thing, so I don't want you to hear that word and make it seem like it's a bad thing. But we also want to make sure that it has other reasons to be there. But I think what Austin's pointing out, really, the main thing is that every day can't trash you. And that's the most important point. And whether we're doing it as a no-score day, or we're finding movements that are a little bit lighter, a little bit less taxing on the body, we try to make sure that there's a balance of that and not every day just destroy you as much as possible.
Yeah, and kind of just to hit this again is I actually hear this one a lot, like, what happened to our recovery Thursdays? Like that's a thing all of a sudden. And I'm like, oh, I mean, it could be recovery Monday, it could be recovery Friday. Like, if a recovery day is what you're looking for, like Drew said, we have to have every day have a purpose because not every member comes 6-7 days a week. Like, there are people who are on, 15 class cards right now that's 3 times a week or maybe 4 times a week for them. And if, one of the days they can come is only Thursday, like, okay, well, we never do strength on Thursday, so they're never hitting that. Then you think of things like what we were talking about earlier, of like Heartbreak Kid. So that means they most likely miss that prep every single time, and then they happen to come on Heartbreak Kid, get like 2 minutes slower, and then I'm the bad guy. So like, when you think of like a recovery, first off, I think just taking a day off the gym would be the best bet. Just getting outside the gym, take a walk, do something like that. But you can approach any workout with that mindset. Like, I think people see aerobic workouts, like long aerobic workouts, and they're like, oh, this is a flush day. Like, oh, really? Because I'm pretty sure if you hit it hard, it's not going to feel like a flush day. Now, it may not have like the loading of like a heavy deadlift or something like that, but you can definitely make that workout super intense, and it could demolish like your nervous system for the next day if you wanted to. But you can easily throttle back if you just want to get a good sweat in that day, and that can happen on any workout. I did it yesterday. It wasn't even supposed to be. It was a 12-minute AMRAP, and I did it interval style because I just wanted to move and sweat. So I mean, I don't think we'll ever have like a slow, like, functional bodybuilding, like, I say that and we have it tomorrow, but that's before Glenn. But like those, I don't want to say they're going away. You just kind of have to create it yourself in a way, because we have to make a well-rounded program that takes every athlete into consideration, not just the people who come 6 days a week, which is, it's actually not the majority. I would say the majority of people are the 3 to 4 times a week, and they need to get their bang for their buck as well. So if you are someone who comes 6, maybe even 7 days a week, I would recommend find a workout in the week where you take it easier, or you take a day off and go to the beach, take a walk, something like that, because I think those are overlooked as well.
Yeah. Another big component that we kind of glossed over was the strengths, we mentioned that we do it 3 or 4 days a week, but we didn't really talk about the fact that we really make sure that in addition to the movement selection in the workouts being balanced, that the strengths are balanced. So what you won't see, and hopefully you won't see this if it slips in through the cracks, but like you won't see a deadlift strength on Monday and then a clean strength on Wednesday and then a snatch strength on Friday, because those are all things that we would categorize as a primary hinge pattern. And when we're looking at those strengths, we actually try to make sure that between the 3 days, and a lot of times we superset stuff to make this happen, that we hit those categories of a squat, a hinge, an upper pull, an upper push, and sometimes some kind of core accessory piece as well. So of the 3 days, usually you have like one standalone day where it's one movement, and then 2 of those days are supersets that will have those other components in it. So if you guys evaluate a week, you could even give us our own feedback and hold us to the things that we say we're going to do, of making sure that those things are balanced in addition to the week being balanced.
Yeah, and I think even if you break that down to like a day, we tend to superset a strength with a movement pattern that we're going to do even in the workout. So maybe let's just say Fran is the workout, so it's thrusters and pull-ups. So maybe the strength has to do with like some pressing or some squatting, something like that, and it's paired with like a banded lat pull down. We'll do something like that a lot, where you start prepping the movement that's coming later on, but it's not taking away from the meat of the strength, which is whatever the squat or press or whatever it was that day. You'll see us do that a lot. And really the reason is, one, we want to build in rest for you guys, because it's hard for people to take rest, and if we build it in, it happens. But two, it's like, if we don't build in a prep for maybe even like a pull-up, and if we don't build in a skill prep for a pull-up, like how many people are actually going to go warm up for a pull-up before the workout starts? Like, not that many. So it's kind of our job to keep you guys safe in that sense of like, okay, kind of have to take into consideration with this lesson plan, we might not have time to build in a skill practice for the movement, mostly if our focus is on the thruster. So what can I do strength-wise to build in the time where we can get some sort of prep in? So like, maybe it's a ring row, maybe it's a lat pull down, something like that, or they at least get some movement in that mimics a pull up a little bit, so they go in a little bit more prepared for that.
Yeah, one other little thing, I think it's a little thing, but it also can be a big thing when you're talking about getting hundreds of people to buy into a program, is like we do spend a lot of time on the creativity of the workouts, like making sure that, okay, not every day is for time. And we've talked about time domains being different, but not every day is for time. Not every day is an AMRAP. Not every day is, you don't have EMOMs on back-to-back days. We try to have these different interval styles, different rep schemes, ascending, descending, all kinds of things where it looks a little different, and you go into that almost excited because it feels new and different, rather than it's the same old thing all the time. So some weeks we have more creative inspiration than others. Sometimes it can be tough, but we really try to put a lot of effort into that, because we feel like that really feeds into the long-term buy-in of people wanting to do this for years.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we say a lot is like safe and sexy. I think that's the way we like to put it. Like, how can we make it look really sexy on paper that gets people excited, but also like in our programming and coaching mindset, like, can we keep it safe? Yeah. Like it's really fun for people who have muscle ups to be like, yeah, let's do 30 muscle ups for time. But like, how many people are prepared right now physically to do 30 muscle ups for time? Like, well, we could spend 20 minutes doing it and you could probably get them, but like, how can we fit it into a workout or a skill session or a strength session where it's fun? You still get the feeling of doing the muscle ups, but the overarching workout doesn't get hindered because of it. So yeah, safe and sexy is what we shoot for.
Yeah, and obviously we were a CrossFit gym. We evolved from like CrossFit programming, and like if you followed CrossFit.com, you're gonna see a lot of workouts that people would deem very unsexy, like just a 5K run for time, a 2K row, like that's it. There's no strength plus 2K row. It's just a 2K row for time, or like you're gonna do 10 by 100 meter sprints, like that's your entire workout, or practice handstand walk for 30 minutes. Like these are all workouts that have been programmed on CrossFit.com, and for us, like we've never programmed those. And even the things that we did in our early years that I would say looked somewhat close to that, we've really moved away from, because it's like, it doesn't matter how effective something is, how important it is for you guys to have the skill of running 5Ks in your arsenal. if it's not fun, if you're not going to show up, it doesn't matter. So like we're constantly looking at like, what do people actually want to do? What are they going to show up for? And that's different for everybody. I think, one of the things that I would encourage you guys to see is expand who you talk to about those things, because what's fun and sexy for one person isn't for another person. So we're constantly bouncing that off each other of like, I think that looks cool. Do you think that looks cool? Yeah. And you're like, no, that kind of sucks. Actually, I wouldn't be excited.
Very boring. Yeah. And then I think this is the biggest thing, and people ask me this almost every single day, and it's when it comes to Beach Fit and FTX, like, do you guys program together? And I think it's a good thing to bring up that we don't. This is two separate programs because of what we just said. Like, some people find FTX programming sexy and fun and exciting. Some people like Beach Fit, like this is their jam and they're not going over there. Yeah. And that's perfectly fine. I think that's the exciting part about FitTown is we have the two different options depending on what your goals and plans are for your fitness life. Like, it gives you the option depending on which one you want to go to. The only thing that we do plan is like, are you going to have skis that day or am I going to have skis that day? And that's really the only thing we talk back and forth on. But everything else is completely separate because like Drew said, like you need to be really excited for what you're going to do. And some people do not find putting a heavy barbell on your back exciting. And some people, like, that's what they live for. Like, that's what they want to come in here and do. So having the two separate programs helps us as a gym out, but also helps like individuals find their little group and their little niche.
Yeah, and I'm like the one variable that's consistent between the two programs in terms of being in both meetings, but my mindset is completely different in the two. And I think it's funny where I'm often in Beach Fit suggesting, hey, what if we add this in to kind of slow people down, keep the heart rate a little bit more moderate, less intensity, where in FTX, I'm kind of saying the opposite. Well, what if we take this out, or what if we add this in to make it more intense, because we're dealing typically with shorter time domains and trying to accomplish different goals. So it's really important for me, and that's why I don't think I've ever programmed, been in your role, your and Amanda's roles, doing the same, like doing an FTX week and Beach Fit week from scratch, because I think it's too hard to do that. Like, as you guys have seen, if you've watched both episodes, it's a full-time job to be constantly thinking about programming ideas for the future. And I think you can only do that for one program at a time. Yeah. And then individual athletes, you guys have personal training clients and stuff like that you focus on separately. And
it would be really easy to, if you were overseeing both of them, to make them look similar even if you didn't mean to. Yeah. Like, it would be very similar for me to use my template of squat on Monday, deadlift on Tuesday, or whatever that week happened to be, and then carry it over and just change movements. Like, I could see that happening so easily. Whereas like when Amanda usually does programming right before me because her meeting's on Tuesday, mine's on Wednesday. When I look at it and I see like what machines she has used, I try not to look at the movements, because usually when I do that, I like oh, that's a good idea. Like, and then I we like try to steal like things back and forth, which is fine. I like getting ideas, but I try not to do it in the given week, because then if someone wants to do Beach Fit over FTX, I'm like, what the heck? That's like the same workout. Yeah. And if it does happen to look that way one day, like, just know it's completely by chance, because I don't think she pays attention to FTX as much as. And I don't really pay attention to Beach Fit as much. I still do Beach Fit sometimes, but like I don't spend my time like examining her programming, because if I did that, it would almost in a way take away from what I'm trying to do, because of the thought process and the movements I have already in my head and what we're progressing to. So
nice. I think we'll end there. Do you have anything else?
That's it.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you on the next one.